Welcome back to Unboxing OD. I'm your host, Kenneth Pearson, and today we're tackling a topic that sits at the core of every high-performing organization: psychological safety. Now, if you work in organizational development, HR, or leadership, you've probably come across this term before. It's the idea that employees should feel safe to speak up, ask questions, admit mistakes, and challenge ideas without fear of punishment or embarrassment. It sounds simple enough, but the reality is, many organizations say they value openness and innovation, yet their cultures tell a very different story. How often do employees bite their tongues in meetings because they don't want to sound uninformed? How many people hesitate to challenge a flawed decision because they're worried about how it will be perceived? These moments might seem small, but over time, they shape an organization's culture in a way that discourages risk-taking, stifles creativity, and erodes trust. And that's where OD comes in. Psychological safety isn't just a nice-to-have. It's essential for any initiative that aims to create lasting change. Without it, even the most well-designed OD strategies won't gain traction because employees won't feel secure enough to engage in the process. Today, we're going beyond the surface-level understanding of psychological safety. We'll explore what it really looks like in organizations, how it plays out in team dynamics, and most importantly, what OD professionals can do to help build and sustain it at every level, whether it's coaching leaders, working with teams, or embedding it into the organization's culture. Let's start with why this concept is so critical in the world of OD. It's easy to assume that psychological safety is just about making people feel comfortable, but it's actually about creating an environment where people feel safe enough to take risks, challenge norms, and contribute without fear of being penalized. And that's exactly what OD practitioners are trying to foster. Organizations that don't just function, but actually evolve. Consider Google's famous Project Aristotle study. They spent years analyzing hundreds of teams, trying to pinpoint what made some teams consistently perform better than others. The answer? It wasn't talent, industry experience, or even technical expertise. It was psychological safety. The highest performing teams were the ones where members felt safe to speak freely, express concerns, and admit when they didn't know something. Now, let's look at the flip side. When psychological safety isn't present, employees disengage, groupthink takes over, and innovation slows down. In the worst cases, you see catastrophic failures. Think of corporate scandals where employees see red flags but didn't feel safe enough to report them. Whether it's a major compliance issue or just an environment where people don't feel valued, a lack of psychological safety has real consequences. For OD practitioners, this is where our work gets interesting. Psychological safety isn't just something we talk about, it's something we actively build. Every leadership training, team intervention, and cultural transformation effort we lead is an opportunity to either strengthen or weaken psychological safety. And if we're not addressing it directly, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle. If you work in OD, you've probably seen firsthand how psychological safety, or the lack of it, manifests in organizations. It's in how meetings are run, how decisions are made, and how leaders respond to mistakes. It's in whether employees feel comfortable asking for help, or if they stay quiet out of fear of looking incompetent. In organizations where psychological safety is strong, you see leaders openly admitting mistakes and framing them as learning opportunities. Teams engage in constructive debates without it turning personal. Employees aren't afraid to share half-informed ideas because they know they won't be shut down. In these cultures, psychological safety isn't just an abstract concept. It's embedded in everyday behaviors. Now, contrast that with an organization where employees hesitate before hitting send on an email because they're worried about how their wording might be interpreted. Or where leaders say they want feedback but visibly tense up when they actually receive it. Or where only the loudest voices get heard in meetings while everyone else stays silent. These are all indicators that psychological safety isn't where it needs to be. And here's the key. It doesn't matter how many engagement surveys an organization sends out or how many posters about open communication they put up. If the behaviors don't align, employees will act accordingly. So what's our role as OD professionals in all of this? We're not just facilitators. We're architects of workplace culture. That means we have the unique opportunity to help organizations build psychological safety, but only if we approach it intentionally. One of the most effective ways we can do this is through leadership coaching. Leaders set the tone for psychological safety, whether they realize it or not. If a leader dismisses ideas, reacts poorly to feedback, or dominates conversations, employees will quickly learn that it's safer to stay quiet. On the flip side, leaders who actively seek input, acknowledge their own mistakes, and create space for others to speak up foster a completely different dynamic. This is why leadership development programs should include training on active listening, emotional intelligence, and creating inclusive environments. Because without those skills, psychological safety doesn't stand a chance. At the team level, OD professionals can facilitate interventions that build trust and open dialogue. This might include structured team building exercises, retrospective meetings that encourage reflection, or even simple ground rules around how teams engage in discussions. One technique I've seen work well is having teams share past experiences of when they felt safe or unsafe speaking up at work. It creates awareness that helps teams define what psychological safety means for them. Beyond individual leaders and teams, we also have the opportunity to shape psychological safety at the cultural level. This could mean working with HR to ensure that performance reviews emphasize growth over perfection. It might involve advising executives on how to respond to mistakes in a way that encourages learning rather than fear. It could even mean integrating psychological safety principles into DEI initiatives, ensuring that underrepresented voices aren't just heard, but valued. Of course, psychological safety isn't something you just declare. It has to be built and maintained over time. And there are real challenges that come with that. Some leaders see vulnerability as a weakness and resist the idea of admitting mistakes. Some organizations are so focused on short-term results that they dismiss psychological safety as a soft issue, failing to see how it directly impacts performance and retention. This is where OD practitioners have to be strategic. If leadership isn't fully aligned, OD efforts won't gain traction. And if we try to push psychological safety without tying it to business outcomes, we risk losing executive buy-in. The solution? Start with leadership alignment. Create small but visible wins that demonstrate impact. And be prepared to have ongoing conversations, because culture change doesn't happen overnight. So here's something to think about. Does your organization really have psychological safety, or does it just say it does? Are employees encouraged to challenge ideas, or do they stay silent in meetings? And as an OD professional, what role can you play in helping teams and leaders create an environment where people feel safe to take risks, speak up, and contribute their best work? Psychological safety isn't just an abstract concept. It's the foundation of strong, innovative, and resilient organizations. And as OD professionals, we're in a position to make it a reality. That's it for today's episode of Unboxing OD. If this conversation resonated with you, let's continue it. Connect with me on LinkedIn, share your thoughts, and let me know what's working or not working in your organization. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and take care of your organization and the people who make it work.